All right, so you want to like really nail English, like maybe for something big like the IELTS or TOEFL.
Exams like those, they can feel like a mountain to climb, right?
Totally. But the cool thing is, it's not just about memorizing grammar rules. It's about, owning the language.
Right, like making it a part of you.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today. This super practical article from top universities. It's called 7 Ways to Quickly Improve Your English Language Skills.
See, I always appreciate when these articles acknowledge that it's about quickly improving, because who has years to spare, right?
For real. So they kick things off with a fun one, watching English movies.
You mean all that Netflix binging wasn't studying already?
Right. But seriously, there's real science behind it.
Oh, absolutely. It's this cool thing called implicit learning. Think how kids learn language. It's not like they're sitting there with flashcards, right? They just kind of absorb it.
By like being surrounded by it all the time.
Exactly. Movies give you that same immersion. You're chilling, enjoying the story, but your brain's secretly picking up on grammar, pronunciation, even slang.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like you're learning without even realizing it. So it's not just about following the plot. It's about paying attention to how the characters use language.
And the beauty is, you can tailor your viewing to your goals, craving a wider vocabulary. Documentaries, my friend.
Ooh, good call. I've always found documentaries to be super engaging anyway.
Right. And they often use very precise language. Think of someone like, say, David Attenborough. Ever notice how his narration is so rich and descriptive, but never feels stuffy?
Totally. That's super helpful, especially if you're aiming for those high scores on the IELTS writing section.
Well, speaking of writing, the article's next tip is all about diving into the world of English language news.
Okay, so not just scrolling through headlines, but really digging into the articles themselves.
And not just the serious stuff either. They recommend a good mix, broadsheets, magazines, maybe even the occasional tabloid, just for fun.
I like that. So like you wouldn't use the same tone in an academic essay as you would in like a casual blog post, right?
Exactly. It's about understanding how language adapts depending on the audience and the context, which is honestly a skill for life, not just exams.
So true. So someone listening might be like, okay, how do I actually apply this?
Well, pay attention to the way language is used, the tone, the word choice, how sentences are structured.
It's like they're giving you a master class in how to be persuasive, how to connect with your reader.
Right. And that's something you can apply to your own writing, no matter what you're writing about.
Totally. Okay, next up is a tip that might seem a bit old school, but it's a classic for a reason. Building a vocabulary notebook.
Ah, yes, the trusty vocabulary notebook.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of learners, they kind of miss the mark.
How so? I mean, isn't writing down new words enough?
It's a good start, for sure.
Yeah.
But to truly make those words yours, you got to use them actively.
Okay, I can see how just having a list of definitions isn't really going to cut it. It's like having a toolbox full of shiny new tools, but never actually building anything, right?
Precisely. The magic happens when you start applying what you've learned. And there's some really cool techniques for that. Have you heard of spaced repetition?
Spaced repetition. Tell me more.
So instead of cramming all those new words at once, you space out your review sessions, gradually increasing the time between them. It's like tricking your brain into holding on to the information for the long haul.
That's fascinating. So it's about working smarter, not harder when it comes to memorization. Any other tips for making those words stick?
Oh, absolutely. Another one I love is etymology.
Etymology. Break that down for us.
Think of it like detective work, but for words.
Yeah.
You dig into their origins, their roots, how their meanings have shifted over time.
Okay, I can already tell this is going to make me appreciate language on a whole new level.
And the best part is, it makes those words way more memorable. Because now you have a story, a connection to them.
I love that. All right, moving on to something I know a lot of us find a bit scary. Speaking practice.
Ah, yes. This is where those movies and news articles, they really start to pay off. You've been passively absorbing all this language. Now it's time to actually put it into practice. Think of conversation as your fluency gym.
The article really emphasizes active speaking, and I know for a fact that can be intimidating, especially when you're prepping for an exam where speaking is a component like the IELTS or TOEFL. The pressure is definitely on.
Absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it. They're so worried about making mistakes, about not sounding perfect.
So true. But isn't that how we learn? By making mistakes and then figuring out how to correct them.
Precisely. And remember, native speakers make mistakes all the time, too. It's part of what makes language, well, human.
I love that it's about progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some practical ways someone could, build that confidence muscle when it comes to speaking?
That's a great question. And honestly, it comes down to finding what works for you and making it a habit.
So it's like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, exactly. Practice, practice, practice. The article really hammers that point home.
Well, and they're not wrong. There's a reason why that's like the oldest piece of advice in the book.
Right. It's about building those neural pathways, making those connections stronger every time you practice. It's like, going to the gym, but for your brain.
I like that. So what's more effective than like cramming for hours before a big test, or like dedicating even just 15 minutes every single day to practicing?
You already know the answer. Those small, consistent efforts, way more powerful than trying to cram everything in at once.
Yeah.
Think of it like, building a muscle you wouldn't expect to see results by only working out once a month, right?
True. Consistency is key in language learning and in life, I guess. Okay, so speaking of building those brain muscles, the article also talks about the importance of being curious, of going beyond just memorizing words and grammar rules.
Yes, love this one. Because it's not enough to just know what the why is just as important.
It's like, don't just accept things at face value. Ask questions like, why does this grammar rule exist? What's the logic behind it? What are the different ways this word can be used?
Exactly. It's about becoming an active learner, engaging with the language on a deeper level.
Which I bet makes you a more well-rounded English speaker in the long run.
Absolutely. And not just that, it helps you develop those critical thinking skills, which are valuable in every aspect of life.
Totally. It's like suddenly you're not just learning a language, you're learning how to think differently. Okay, now for a tip that I think is super important but often overlooked, make it fun.
Oh, this is huge. Because let's be real, if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to stick with it. Motivation is everything.
Exactly. So the article really stresses this point of finding what motivates you. What are you passionate about? How can you weave English into those interests?
Right. Like if you're a huge music fan, dive into song lyrics. If you're a foodie, explore recipes in English. Find what lights you up and let that passion fuel your language learning journey.
It's really about finding those things that make you excited to learn.
Exactly. And the cool thing is our brains are actually wired for this.
What do you mean?
Think about it. You've already mastered one language, right? Your native language. English. It's just another code to crack.
That's a good way to look at it. So for someone listening right now who's maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, maybe even a little intimidated by these exams like the IELTS or the TOEFL, what would you say to them?
I'd say, remember this deep dive. Think back to all the things we've talked about.
Right. Like those small, consistent steps we talked about, the movies, the news articles, even those vocabulary lists. It's about making it a habit, part of your routine.
Exactly. Those aren't just random tips. They're strategies to rewire your brain, to make English feel less like, a chore and more like something you enjoy.
It's like shifting your perspective, right? Seeing it as this exciting opportunity to unlock a whole new level of communication, and who knows what doors that might open.
Precisely. Imagine yourself, acing that exam, confidently navigating a business meeting, effortlessly connecting with people from all over the world.
It's about bridging cultures, sharing ideas, telling your story on a global stage. So to everyone listening, as you embark on this exciting journey of mastering English, just remember.
You've got this. We believe in you.
And don't forget to have fun along the way, because when you enjoy the process, the learning never really stops.